Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to show you 10 tips that can help maximize your efficiency using Figma. Let's get to it. For tip number 1, we're going to cover the nudge amount. So by default, if I've got an item selected in Figma and I hold Shift key and move it around, it's going to move it by 10 pixels. Now, what if I'm working in a grid system that's divisible by 8? What we could do is we could change that nudge amount to 8 pixels by going into the Figma menu, going to Preferences, and under Preferences, you've got your nudge amount. So this allows you to change that nudge to any number that you've selected. So for example, let's select 8 here, hit Enter, and now if we hold Shift and move it around, it's going to move by 8 pixels. For tip number 2, I'm going to show you how to export your designs into a PDF document. So instead of having to go and use an online tool where they limit the file size that you can export or limit how many exports you can do everything in Figma. This is very handy. So for instance, I've got 3 designs here, and imagine that a client says that they want to export these ones to PDFs to send to their stakeholders. So for instance, the first thing you need to do is make sure that everything is inside of a frame. So the way the export function works is it exports one frame to one page of the PDF. And another thing to note is that you want to structure these from left to right. So the leftmost frame is going to be your page 1, and your last frame is going to be your last page in the PDF. So right now in this particular page, there are 3 frames. We're going to go to the menu option here again, hit File, and under File, Export Frames to PDF. You can rename the file name, so let's call it Export, and select where we want to go, click Save, and now if we go to our download folder, you can see that we've exported our PDF here, and there you have it, a PDF version of your designs. For tip number 3, I'm going to cover the arc tool. So if we create an ellipsis on our board right now, once you've selected it and you hover over it, there's a little handle that appears. If you select it and drag it, you're going to create a sweep for this arc. Now there's a couple other handles here. There's one in the middle, which is the ratio. So you can actually make sort of a donut shape if you'd like. And the one on the right, this handle here, will control the starting position for this particular sweep. Now, when is this tool useful? Personally, I've worked on a very big project where I needed to create a lot of dashboard designs, I needed to create a lot of graphs and infographics, and I used this tool to create most of them very easily. This is an example from one of those projects. For tip number 4, I'm going to show you how to move an object, constraining it to its parent container. So for instance, let's say I've got this design here and I want to move the search button to be slightly offset of that container here. So if I grab it and drag it, what's going to happen is it's going to start fitting it into that container's auto layout. And that's not something I want to do. So how would I do that through dragging it? What I could do is once I click and hold and start dragging it, hold the space bar, and now you can drag it anywhere within the container without it falling into another container or even falling outside of the container on our board. So there we go, we'll just align it, and there you have it. Tip number 5, I'm going to show you how to search and replace text anywhere on your file. Now this is a very new feature that Figma's released. I've been waiting for it for a very long time. So let's get started. For instance, let's say we want to find all instances of MEL. Traditionally, what you'd have to do, you'd have to manually look for this and replace it manually as well. This took a lot of time, and it also created room for mistakes, where you'd have some designs inconsistent with others because you forgot to rename certain text. Instead, what you could do is hold Command button and hit the F key, and that will show you the search panel. So now we can type in MEL, and as you can see, Figma has highlighted all instances of this text that I've typed in. And not only can you search it on this particular page, but you can search it anywhere on the file. So for instance, we can select all pages and it'll find all instances of this on every single page within this file. This is great. Let's keep it at this page for now. If you click on these sliders here, you can actually hit replace, and now we have the ability to replace the text that we've searched. For instance, let's say that our client says, I want to replace all instances of MEL to QLD. We can simply hit QLD here, click on the replace all button, and now we've replaced every single instance on this page. For tip number 6, I'll show you how to rename multiple layers at once. So for instance, we've got two sets of icons. We've got the large ones and we've got the small ones. Now what I want to do is I want to retain the name of each individual icon, but append LG to each one at the end. So what I could do is I could select all of them, hold Command and hit R, or if you're on a PC, it'll be Control R. And now what I want to do is I want to retain its current name. So let's hit the current name button. Let's add a dash. And now we can add our appended LG. And as you can see in the preview, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to have our current name plus the appended LG for each one. When we hit rename, you can see in the layers panel that effect has taken place. Now, what if I want to do the same? So I want to rename multiple layers, but instead of appending some text to it, I want to append a descending or an ascending order to each of those renamed layers. I could do the same. So for instance, let's say I've got 3 different cards here, version 1, version 2, and version 3. I can select all of these cards. Again, go to the renaming panel here, use the current name, and now when we type in our version here, we can hit the number button with the arrow up. That will give us an ascending order. You can change the starting number here as well. So let's say I want to start from 30, you can do that here. And as you can see in our preview, it's going to say version 30, version 31, 32. Let's keep it at 1 for now. Hit rename. And now you can see in our layers panel, we've renamed each one to card 1, card 2, and card 3. Tip number 7, I'm going to show you how to get this little toggle within your component variants. Now this is very handy for me because I can, with one click of a button, toggle the state of my variant. So for instance, right now I've got a toggle switch that's off. I can turn that on and it turns on here inside my design as well. So now I'll show you how to do it. Let's go into the actual component. As you can see, our component has 2 variants, and each variant has a property of on and off. So Figma knows that when the value of your property is set to on versus off, it will use the toggle switch by default. You could also use true or false or yes or no. Currently, those are the only 3 Boolean statements you could use as far as I know. For tip number 8, I'm going to show you how to set thumbnail covered images for your files. So for instance, I've got a project board here, there's 3 files, then don't have any thumbnails. It's quite hard for me to identify which is which. Now imagine if you're working part of a big team and there's 40 files inside of your project board. It's going to be a bit messy. It's going to take you a while to figure out which file you need to access. So I'm going to show you how to create the thumbnails. So for this example, I've already done one. So this is my thumbnail here that I want to use. There's 2 things that you need to note is that a thumbnail needs to use a frame. And the second is the width and height properties of the frame needs to be 1600 by 960, which is actually set by the Figma team. So once I've got my thumbnail selected, I can right click on it and hit set as thumbnail. So if we go back to our project board, now you can see that that file has now a nice thumbnail. For tip number 9, I'm going to show you how to remove interactions from a large prototype. So for instance, let's say we've got a prototype here. This is just an example that I created earlier. We want to duplicate it, but instead we want to test a different user flow. So I want to create separate interactions that are different from the first prototype. Instead of going in and removing each interaction individually, what we could do is select the frame or frames that you want to remove the interactions for. For instance, in my case, I want to remove interactions for all of these frames. You can right-click the selection and hit Remove Interactions. This is a very quick and easy way to remove every interaction from your prototype. For our last tip, I'm going to cover the Scale tool. So imagine if your marketing team asked you to deliver them an image of your design that's very high res, let's just say ×4. So currently our design is 375 pixels in width and 812 in height. If we grab it and start scaling it, what's going to happen is it's going to scale based on its constraint in a responsive manner. So let's just start scaling it. Look what's happening here. The text is not getting bigger, the button's not getting bigger, nothing's getting bigger. It's just scaling based on the constraining properties you've set for each component. Now, what you could do instead is click on the cursor key here, so the move tool, and hit scale, or if you've just pressed K on your keyboard. So now, when you're scaling it, everything's going to scale proportionally. So you can either manually scale it, or what I like to do is I'd like to go in the right-hand panel and select how much I want to scale it by. So for instance, ×4. And there you have it. You've got a high res image that you can export to your marketing team now. Thanks for tuning in on my video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you want to see more videos like this. I also am going to cover videos on HTML, CSS, and also design systems as well. Thank you.